Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Get to know the real estate ecosystem at Real-Estate.Channel, your go to podcast for unfiltered stories from the people shaping the real estate market. In our last episode with Jeffrey Halpern, we unpacked two of the most misunderstood responsibilities in real estate, which were fiduciary duty and fair housing. And we also discussed the old car framework for fiduciary duty, why confidentiality and reasonable care often create legal problems for agents, and how fair housing violations frequently happen unintentionally through language, assumptions, or poor judgment. But that conversation raised a much bigger question. If agents misunderstand these responsibilities, who is actually responsible when something goes wrong? Is it the agent? Is it the broker supervising them? Or is it the training system? Or is it this continuing education structure that is supposed to keep professionals competent? Today's episode goes deeper into the structure of the industry itself, the system that train agents, supervise them, and hold them accountable. Jeff, a very warm welcome to the show.
Great to be back, Anisha. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you, Jeff. So, Jeff, let's start with the foundation. What is a broker legally responsible for when agents operate under their license?
Well, a broker is actually responsible for almost all the actions an agent does in real estate because the broker is the responsible party for every single client that comes through. Matter of fact, each client is the client of the broker.
Mm-hmm.
The agent is the sub-agent of the broker, meaning they're also the sub-agent of the client, that client being also known as the principal. Broker is the ultimate responsibility.
Got it. And when an agent gets sued for a $50,000 mistake, does the broker actually step into the line of fire, or do they just point to the independent contractor agreement?
No, because it's all clear what it is, first of all. Secondly, the broker does get involved because it's the broker's reputation and it's the broker's company. And sometimes, most of the time, the broker's company is actually part of the litigation. They're also the one who is the defendant. And sometimes the broker has to prove that maybe they aren't the cause of the incident, as long as they didn't know about it, and as long as they covered it during their training, or they covered it in their policies and procedures manual, which hopefully they gave to the agent to read and to sign off on.
Fine, Jeff. I was about to ask you, Jeff, that what is the right time of becoming a broker? From an agent, or one can become a broker just like that? Like, you have to just pass the exam and then you have to be you can be a broker? Or does it take experience, like a full-fledged experience, to be a broker? Like, what is the process? Can you explain it for our audience, please?
Sure. So an agent's almost like an apprenticeship for a brokerage or to become a broker. In New Jersey, the rules are that one must be a full-time agent for 3 years doing a certain amount of business before they can go for their broker's license. In order to go for their broker's license, they must go to 150-hour course. 90 of them are core, which is very similar to the agent course. 30 hours is going to be management of a real estate office, and the other 30 hours are in ethics. They have to also take a school exam and pass the state exam. Once they pass the state exam, then they become a broker. As a broker, they can either open up their own office as a broker of record, or they can become a manager of someone else's office, or they could just keep selling as they want to. I mean, having a broker's license definitely puts you on a different status than an agent. And I always think that all agents, if they're in the business for at least 3 years, should get the broker's license. It gives them a lot more options.
And Jeff, is the broker that we are talking about, is it different for when we talk about residential, or is it different for commercial? Or once you become a broker, like, you can deal with, be it commercial or residential or equestrian properties, anything?
Well, I could speak for my state. You can be a broker for any type of real estate, including property management, commercial real estate, and residential real estate, or even just opening up a rental referral company or a real estate referral.
Understood. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
And Jeff, now from your experience managing offices, what is the biggest misunderstanding agents have about a broker's supervision?
I think the biggest misunderstanding, and this is a good question, is that the independent contractor feels they are independent. So they can kind of do what they want to do. But it's not true. They still have to stay within the laws, within the code of ethics, and within the company's policies and procedures. Like, for instance, there are agents out there that will just go out and take a listing and come in at a very low commission rate, which is against the company's policies and procedures. As a broker, I could say to them, I'm not going to take this listing. It's less than what we would accept. So they don't understand that. They think they have a lot more freedom than they do, but they should really rely on their broker when they run into situations where they can't just make it up. You know, they're brokers, again, responsible for every single client and customer that is out there.
And in theory, brokers are supposed to oversee transactions. But in reality, many brokers have dozens or even hundreds of agents. So, Jeff, tell me, is real supervision actually happening in today's brokerage model?
So if you're in a big company that has branch offices, each office has a manager, which is a broker supervisor, and they are overseeing their agents within that office. The broker of record is hoping that that branch manager is watching every transaction. But it can get hairy if there is lots of agents doing lots of business and they're just out there doing business without calling their broker. But a broker still's got to be responsible for every transaction. When I manage offices, I would go through every single transaction to make sure all the paperwork is there. Also, brokers and broker managers rely a lot on their administrators who are unlicensed but are overseeing the paper trail. And that's a big thing. You need an admin who really knows what they're doing with paperwork, because I always believe that the admin is probably the most important aspect of a real estate office. You know how we have the head of a company? I always think that the admin are the lungs of the company because they keep everything breathing, smoothly. So you really need that process and that back office stability, which is the admin and the broker or the broker manager.
Sure. And how can one be a broker's manager? Like a broker himself or herself decide that they want a particular individual from outside the industry, or he or she has to be from within the industry?
So they have to be within the industry because they have to get their broker's license. So they have to be an agent for 3 years before they could get their broker's license. So you can't manage an office without a broker's license, or also known as a broker manager or a broker supervisor.
Okay, so the broker or broker manager or the broker supervisor, all three terms are for broker himself or herself.
Sort of. The broker manager is the one person who's responsible for every agent in the company, no matter if you have one office or several branch offices. The branch supervisor or the broker supervisor supervises just their office and those agents that were within the office. But even though they're responsible for their agents, the broker of record is ultimately responsible for every agent within that company. So if you're a big company with thousands of agents, I don't know how they sleep at night because they're responsible for every single agent out there. And I know they rely on their broker managers, but those broker managers have to know what they're doing as well. For a branch office, you would need a broker because you need one anyway in Jersey by law. You need a broker manager in each branch office, as well as the broker record who heads up the entire brokerage company. Hopefully that helps.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Okay, good.
So now, Jeff, have you ever seen a situation where a mistake by an agent ultimately became a legal problem for the broker?
Well, it happens a lot. Remember that story I gave you about the one agent who showed homes to a particular school system? It was from a couple of episodes ago, where she sold her house, couldn't find, sold her house that was in the wrong school system. Well, the broker then got involved as well. So the agent was sued, the broker was sued.
Okay.
I was in a situation once. I was a broker of record for a real estate company, and I discovered that the two owners, who were not licensed but they own the company, which you can do that. They were selling real estate without a real estate license. So did I get in trouble? No, I quit. I
Oh,
quit the company because I didn't want to get involved with that. Because my predecessor, the subsequent manager, broker record, also went through the same thing. She quit as well. And sometimes a manager can catch a an agent doing something before they get caught. In other words, that if you're a manager who's supervising your agents correctly, then hopefully you can catch it before it happens. For instance, the one I told you another story where the two agents within the company I used to work for, or I still work for now, they did a video which was blatantly discriminatory, even though it was self-deprecating. I don't know if you remember that story.
I can you please like I
Sure.
seriously don't. Yeah.
That's okay. So these two agents did a video and posted it, and they were sitting in their office. So it was a video they put on social media in which they were sitting in front of the sign of the company I was working for. And they get a call, and one of the agents says to the other one, "Hey, look, we got a lead. And look, his name ends with a vowel." And so the other agent says, "Oh, I bet he's Italian." Now, again,
Yes,
remember
I
that's
remember
against the
that
law.
story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So the video, even though it was self-deprecating, was unlawful. So I called my manager who didn't follow them on Instagram and said, "You got to tell them to take it down." And one of them got it. They took it down. One of them got it, but one of them said, "Well, I didn't think that was too bad." But the point was that they did take it down, but the manager didn't find it or didn't see it. I just happened to be watching it. That's all. It just happened to come into my feed. So something like that would have gotten the company and the manager and the broker in trouble because the video started out in one of our offices.
Okay.
So they could have sued everybody. Now, if for some reason they didn't start it in the office and they just started it at the next point, which was at someone's house who happened to be owned by someone who was an Italian, then the company may not have gotten in trouble because they did it on their own. Because fair housing has been found that unless the company is is allowing it or their policies and procedures doesn't follow fair housing, the company will not be liable for what they did
Okay.
because of the fact they did it on their own, and no one else knew about it until someone saw it online. So there are some things that the broker is responsible for. There's a couple things that the broker is not. The biggest thing is if a broker knows it's going on and they do nothing about it, then they have what is known as guilty knowledge, right? So then now they are liable. In other words, they didn't say take it down or whatever. But if they didn't know about it and they don't promote whatever they did wrong, and their policies and procedures state that this is wrong, and the agent knew because they read the policies and procedures, then the broker's pretty much not to blame.
So, Jeff, a lot of new agents believe that once they get licensed, they are ready to practice. But how prepared are most agents after they pass the real estate exams?
Some more than others. Some have already been in sales, so they know the process. Some never. So they are prepared because they passed the test, but they may not be prepared to deal with people, to understand housing. To really, they probably know the laws better because they just got out of school, but how to initiate doing what's right and what's wrong.
And when new agents go to open houses or they try to get a lead, try to make a sale, does the broker accompany them in the initial few days, or who is that person who has assessed those new agents?
So I guess it's based on what their training program is. You know, if they're trained correctly, if it's a larger company, usually their training systems are much more complete because they put it all in place. If it's like a mom and pop shop, maybe they do it on the seat of their pants. Maybe an open house, they'll say, "Come with me to my next open house and we'll do it together," which a lot of companies do. Because if I was a listing agent that couldn't make my open house, or there was a new agent that wanted to start going to open houses, I would make sure that they were with me so they knew what questions to ask, how to treat people, and if there's interest, how to initiate maybe an offer, or at least getting more questions out of them to get to the next point. It's like a mentorship.
Now, from an educator's perspective, what critical skills are missing from the current licensing education system? What do you think?
The critical skills are more people minded. I think it would be great skill if we took a psychology course.
Can
Some way, I know we won't do that. We're not psychologists, but because we become psychologists when we're real estate agents, we play a lot of parts.
Mhm.
We play their chauffeur, their babysitter, psychologist, their stager, everything else that's involved. Sometimes I think an aspect would be learning more about people, how to understand them, because the classes that we take are more about laws, and they're not really like, they don't even test you when you take continuing education. So you will just take it and you'll have it on in the background, or you'll go to a class, but they won't test you. And I think CE is lacking in that, continuing it by a lot. I know agents don't want to hear that, but I think they should be tested.
Very well said. Anything apart from that that you think that needs or is like the education system should add or take out?
Nothing to take out. I think just the testing part of it is what they should add. No, it doesn't have to be hard tests, but now you have to pay attention to the class. And that's a big difference. I know that they will put on like polls if you're doing an online type of class where they'll have a poll. And so if you answer the poll, they know you're paying attention, but the poll is really something minor.
To basically make the class more interactive so that they also know that the agents are paying attention.
Yes. I mean, I could tell that when I teach my real estate course for pre-licensing. I don't know who's paying attention, because this is the adult class, because they don't have their faces on. They have their black boxes with their name. But you know what? They're adults. They're big kids now. They're spending money to go to school. So if they're there just to not do anything, that's their problem. It really is. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I'm getting paid no matter what. But when you get your license, now it's important that you pay attention. There's not enough information. There's information about your basic ethics, which is fine. Not enough information about the current real estate laws, because they change every single year. Code of ethics is a living document. There are changes every year, not full revamping, but an addition or subtraction based on a situation.
Jeff, I know that we are discussing this thing that how adults learn and that you have seen in front of your own eyes. But the question is, do you notice a difference between students who truly learn the material versus those who just want to pass the exam? Can you just make that out from your
Sure.
students?
The ones that are engaged, the ones that during class they ask questions, whether
Yeah.
it's through the chat or they actually ask them using their voice. That's the ones I know are involved. When I throw a question out there, real quick question, they'll answer it or they'll respond to it. The ones at the end of each one of my adult classes, I give a quiz. The ones that answer are the ones that are paying attention. And then the last thing is when I get done early and I say goodbye to everybody, right? And then there's people on there that have not responded at all. Not goodbye, not thank you. You know that they weren't paying attention in the first place. So they just know that I've exited and class is over, but I could tell they don't even know we're done. They could be there till the end of the time period. I end at usually like say at 1 o'clock. And then maybe if I end 15 minutes early, they're probably still on by 1 o'clock.
Oh.
So
Yeah, noted. And Jeff, what are some world skills agents must learn that licensing course rarely teach? Like for example, handling inspection, managing negotiations, dealing with emotional buyers and sellers, and documenting transactions properly.
but you named them all. But the one thing those are all great points. One thing is learn about a house, learn about a building. There are agents out there now that have no idea the difference between a boiler and a furnace. If how many amps service in the electrical box? What is a sump pump for? Is there a sump pump? There are a lot of agents that don't know houses. They don't know when they go up into an attic, or even if they've gone up to an attic, whether or not it has, what kind of airflow. Does it have a thing called a ridge vent? I mean, there's lots of things about houses that you need to know that makes you look really smart when you're showing your house. Not just pointing out the really nice, Viking oven, but to point out, other things too that are much more important. Never going into a basement, not even knowing, what's in the basement. That's a major thing. The other things you brought up are really good. You know, how to negotiate. Negotiation is a big part of our business. And this is not negotiating just a house sale, but negotiating almost everything you do in life and just practicing it. I mean, when you go look to work for a real estate company, negotiating your commission, negotiating the tools that you'll get if you have that opportunity to do it. That's a big part as well. There are a lot of aspects that you do not get in your regular education. And again, it's back to that per people thing and how to follow up people and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot. There's a lot you don't learn in licensing class. It's more of life learning. I mean, there's some agents that don't even know the difference between a bi-level and a split level home. I mean, that's basic stuff.
Well, you can teach us in this video. If you never know, maybe the new agents are listening to you right now. It can help them.
That'd be good. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
So, would you like to explain?
What, the difference of a bi-level and a split level?
Yes.
Sure, I'm sorry. I didn't know that's what you meant. So bi-level, when you walk into the front door, you walk into a landing. And there's two stairways, one going up, one going down. On the second level, you'll have a kitchen, dining room, living room, and 2 or 3 or 4 bedrooms, and maybe a bath or 2 baths. If you went on the landing, you went downstairs, you would go into, say, a family room, access to the backyard, maybe an extra bedroom or den, and access to the garage and maybe a laundry room. There's usually no basement in a bi-level. In a split level, it would be 3 levels. So you may walk into a landing or not, or you may walk right into a living room, and you'll either go up a couple stairs to the living room and then half a flight up to the bedrooms. On the living room side, you would have a kitchen, dining room, living room. The third floor, you would have the 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms with a couple baths. Entrance, you would go downstairs to a family room that may have access to the outdoor. And then from the family room, you can actually go into a basement that would be under the living room, dining room. So it could be on 4 levels, could be on 3 levels, but usually they are half levels.
And now, Jeff, let's talk about mistakes. What is common mistake new agents make in their first transactions that could have been prevented with better training provided by the broker?
Contracts. How to fill out a contract. Most real estate companies don't teach their agents to fill out a contract, to understand a contract, for the agents to explain the contract to their buyers or their sellers, meaning a contract of sale or a listing contract. That's the biggest thing I find when contracts come into me, my listings, and I always know when it's a new agent because they have no idea. And that's one of the biggest disservices they can give to their clients is not completing the contract correctly. Because there's a lot of the contracts are, 10, 11 pages long. And I think they really need to be taught. And most managers won't teach it because it's boring. It's really boring stuff. Fill out the blanks, but they have to get excited about it. And the better they know contracts, the better their transactions go. Even though in New Jersey, you have the option to use an attorney to review the contracts after they're done, but you might as well just get it done correctly in the beginning. Makes it easier transaction. It makes the attorney look at you and say, oh, at least this agent knows what they're doing. So that's one of them. The other mistakes is talking too much when they're showing a house or listing a house. And they talk and talk and talk. And a lot of times they'll talk their clients out of buying something because they're throwing too much of their opinion in. And you can't do that because it's not their house. It's their client's house.
But Jeff, do you think that a broker has any part in this training process?
Yes.
Oh.
I do. I think they should be a big part of it. Either the broker or their mentor or whoever. But they need to be taught how to show a house, how to fill out a contract. They need that. I've seen so many new agents they'll show a house and there's a kitchen, there's a dining room, there's a bathroom. You want to make a sale, you have to move people in as you're showing them. Wouldn't this be great for your little child or whatever? this room is perfect.
Give it a personal touch kind of a thing.
Yep. Know your clients, know how to deal with them.
Okay. So now, Jeff, every licensed agent must complete continuing education to keep their license. Am I right? But many agents treat it like just another checkbox in the list. So, why does continuing education often fail to improve real competence?
I think it's because they don't really pay attention. You know, that it's sort of like, well, we have to do it if we keep our license. I also think the teachers may have to be a little more exciting when they give the classes. You know, for instance, the ones that are given in some, they're kind of like they just go through the motions. You know, here's Article 1, blah, 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 instead of making it more exciting. And I've seen both sides. I've
Okay.
seen speakers who are awesome and you are like enthralled and you are engaged with this continuing education class because of the fact that they're telling you things you didn't know and they're getting you excited about it. And then you have the other ones again that are just very boring. So, and again, back to testing. Give them a quiz. It doesn't have to be like a hard quiz, but give them a quiz at the end of the class because then they have to pay attention. And when you have a test and you write down the answers, you learn it better. You know, it's just like flashcards. When you
Mhm.
want to learn a topic, do flashcards because it seems like when you write something down, it's almost like osmosis. It goes from your pen up to your brain and it stays with you.
So, Jeff, have you ever seen agents who have been licensed for 20 years but still misunderstand core concepts? What caused that stagnation?
So yeah, I've seen that. I see it a lot.
Can you
That
give
they're
us an example also, please?
Well, I can go back to the good old days. Let me go to the good old days. Actually, it's interesting. I actually had a call yesterday from one of my colleagues in my office. And because our manager's away, so he called me. And it seems like everybody calls me before they call the manager. I really should be paid for this. He called me because he had a question about the mansion tax in New Jersey. And there's a mansion tax which became a came into play a year ago where a seller now has to pay a tax if they sell their house for over $1 million. And if it sells between $1 million and $1.2 million, it's 1% of the selling price. From 2 million to 2.5, it's 2% of the selling price. So you're paying an extra fee that the seller has to pay, which is ridiculous, but it's just something that they have in Jersey. And he asked me about whether or not it was a sliding scale type of a fee because he said he believed it was something else. And so it wasn't. He should have known that. He should have known that it was the way it was because he misunderstood that he thought it was also based on the realty transfer tax, which is another fee that a seller has to pay when they sell their home, which is on a sliding scale. So it's a little crazy. That's one of them. But he's been in the business for 22 years. He should know better. He shouldn't be asking me these questions. I don't mind answering them, but that's just one quick example. I mean, there has been plenty others as well that they should know. And sometimes they just forget. Sometimes they've been doing the wrong thing forever, so they continue to do it until they get caught.
And when they get caught, they come to you.
Or they go to the broker man. They should be going to the broker manager, but they end up calling me. I had another incident too. This is another one too. I'm sorry. When I was teaching broker's class, I've been consulting one of my ex students who has his broker's license in New York. And he had a question about. He was saying, "You know what I'm thinking of doing? Um, I'm thinking of recommending this painter who's going to then pay me $150 every time I refer him to somebody." And I had to say to him, you can't do that. That is against the law. That's known as a RESPA violation, Real Estate Settlements Procedures Act, which is part of one of the sections, Section 8 of RESPA is you cannot accept referral fees for referring business if you're a real estate agent, a mortgage person, title person, or even from a contractor. That savings should go to the client, not to the agent. So he should have known that. He was a broker. I taught him that 2 years ago when he was in my class, but who knows? He might have been doing that for a while and he forgot. So
Yes.
that would have been a biggie, by the way. If you're caught taking a kickback, it's a lot of money. You could lose your license.
Interesting. Okay, so If you had the power to redesign the real estate education entirely, what would you change immediately?
Are you talking about continuing ed or everything?
Everything you can.
All right. So pre-licensing, I would definitely include more of the actual selling, the actual business itself. I would do that. When it comes to the broker's class, I told you before that the broker's class is 150 hours. 90 is core, 30 is management, 30 is ethics. I would change the hours. I would go roll back to 75 hours of core, 45 hours of management, because that's really important, and 30 hours of ethics. Because I can tell you when I teach the broker's class, I don't think 30 hours is enough. I'm actually like rushing through it. And that's the wrong thing to do. You know, if you're going to get your broker's license, there's a reason why. Usually it's because you want to manage an office or you want to start your own company. Not that it's required, but that's one of the reasons why. So I think I could be much more helpful with that and just teach the 75-hour course, the same one that the agents take, because that's the same, it's the same stuff. They're living it. So why do the 90 hours? And then when it comes to CE, there's so many options to do CE, so many different courses. And I think as they learn year and year, because year over year, they keep improving it. So I like some of the topics that they're putting in. I think maybe they should do like one on how to deal with people. It could be one credit. That's all it is. And that could be an elective instead of being a core because CE is broken down to 6 core and 6 electives. So that's the only thing I would change.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that, Jeff. And let's say an agent makes a serious mistake during a transaction. Who is typically held responsible for it? Is it the agent, broker, or both of them?
Both of them. Both of them based on what it is. Again, it's all according to what it is. If it's something illegal, if the broker has guilty knowledge, then he's liable. Or if the broker's promoting them to do that, he or she is also liable. But the broker always has to think that it's going to be their fault. So how do they get around it? They need to train their agents the right way to do things, the legal way to do things, the ethical way to do things.
And maybe have open communication with the agents and know that they're like whatever ABC step an agent is taking, a broker should be aware of what his or her agents are doing.
Yes, but they aren't because there's so much going on. Not that they aren't totally, but sometimes it's too late. The agent's already done it. So that's why continuing to educate their agents on everything that comes up, which is hard to do because things come up all the time, or the agent knowing. The most important thing is that the agent knows they've got a line of communication to their broker so that their broker's always available to answer a call, or the broker manager, so that they run into that situation. Maybe they can just nip it in the bud without going through it and then, I would then asking for forgiveness later. Right? Sometimes they always say, you've heard that saying, better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. But as a real estate agent, you got to ask for permission. You got to ask for advice because the broker's responsible.
And what if a broker is unaware of what the agent has done? In that case,
if the broker's unaware of what they've done, sometimes they'll never hear about it, or they'll hear about it later on, where a client will call and complain, or they'll, you just don't know. I mean, they're out every day, doing what they do, saying what they say, and again, broker. I don't know how a broker sleeps at night because they don't know what their agents are doing.
yes, I was interviewing one agent, a broker basically, and she told me that something had happened, that the agent did something which the broker, she was not aware of it. And as soon as she got that information, she immediately took action and she fired that particular agent then and there.
I've done that. Same reason. You're right.
Yeah.
I found out later. An agent was firing an agent because the seller called my office saying that a buyer went directly to the seller because the agent wouldn't present the buyer's offer to the seller.
Jeff, if any agent is listening to this, if a broker fires an agent in a particular company, then can the agent go out and apply in a different firm or in a
Oh, yeah,
different real estate
definitely.
office?
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, that agent that I had fired she was hired by another company in a couple days. I wasn't surprised because she was my number 3 agent. But it's interesting. Sometimes firing an agent actually helps your office. Even though they might do good numbers, this agent, when she was fired, my office basically had a party. They were so
Oh,
happy because she had done other things too that they never told me about. And so she would steal clients. She would only sell houses that she had buyers for. That was the whole reason with this was that buyer that made an offer to the seller was never the offer was never presented to that seller, which is by law you have to present it. So I fired her because it was unethical. It was against the law. And what was interesting is that she always went away on vacations and she always would bring me back a gift, right? And
yeah.
then she said, when I said I had to let you go, she said, okay, did I give you that? I said, yeah. All right. She started taking back all the gifts I gave her.
Oh my God.
It was the funniest thing. I mean,
It happened
were
for
there
real?
little trinkets? What?
It happened for real?
Oh, yeah. It happened for real. Okay.
So, Jeff, from a consumer perspective, most buyers and sellers assume their agents knows exactly what they are doing. Do you think the public understands how much training agents actually receive?
No, I don't. I don't think they do. So people are surprised how much agents know, and because they think we just sell. We're like car salesmen, but we're not. And that's our fault as an agent. Not that we don't know it, but we don't promote that to the public. Public doesn't know how much information we know, because again, we're like car salesmen. We're not. Um, so we have to keep promoting that. We're doing it more now because we're on social media, and we're talking about it, but they still don't think it's enough. And that's why it's also our fault because we don't show people our value all the time. And they say, oh, why do we want to spend so much on an agent? They're making thousands and thousands of dollars and all they do is sell us a house. So we have to always continue to show our value.
Understood. And Jeff, now if you had to summarize the relationship between agents, brokers, and education in one sentence, what would that be?
So everything starts with education and learning the business through that respect, but also then steps over to the broker. The broker needs to know also they need to be educated to teach their agents. Their agents now have to then get that to their clients. I don't know another way to do it is it's and they've got to be able to keep learning. They got to keep learning, they got to keep growing, and they've got to keep talking about real estate.
Thank you for that. Okay, so Jeff, quickly, we will like to run a fun segment with you, which is called Broker Reality Check. So
Okay.
you have to give us short answers. Are you ready? Okay, so what one question every new agent should ask their broker before joining a brokerage?
What's your training program?
Okay. And one red flag that tells you an office does not prioritize training.
Does my manager compete with me?
Does my manager compete with me? What does that mean?
A lot of managers are selling managers. So they're spending, and most of their income comes from selling.
Mhm.
And therefore they're somewhat competing with the agent.
Okay, got understood. And what is worse for the industry? Agents who don't know the rules or agents who know them but ignore them?
Agents who know them but ignore them.
Yeah. And what separates a great broker from just a brokerage owner?
And a broker who cares about their agents, really cares about their agents, not just production wise.
And one habit every new agent should develop in their first year in real estate.
One habit, continue to learn the business.
Okay, that's it. Jeff, throughout the season, we have talked about education, fiduciary duty, fair housing, and now broker accountability. If someone is entering real estate today, whether as an agent, broker, or educator, what mindset should they adapt? Uh, adapt to protect both their clients and their career long term.
Know the laws and know your code of ethics. Once you master laws and ethics, everything else will follow.
Amazing. So, thank you, Jeff. And today's conversation highlights something many people don't realize. Real estate is not just about transaction; it is about systems of responsibility. Agents represent clients, brokers supervises agents, and education shapes how both of them make decisions. When any part of that systems weakens, mistakes happens, and those mistakes can affect families, finances, and communities. Jeff, thank you so much again for helping us understand the structure behind this profession. And to our audience, if this episode gave you a new perspective on how the industry actually works, share it with someone who is entering the real estate world today. And Jeff, now you have to say the tagline.
Okay, I'll do it again.
It's time.
Keep learning, keep growing, keep talking about real
Real
estate.
estate. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anisha.